he extend it to someone who's betrayed him so publicly, like Michael Cohen, or someone who's been a little bit more silent and taciturn, like Paul Manafort? But this is ongoing, but that pardon power stands behind all these convictions.
Yeah, I actually think that Cohen makes the pardon of Paul Manafort way more difficult for the president if he was ever inclined to do it.
Yeah.
Now he's got an even darker cloud hanging over him. If he starts handing out pardons willy-nilly to former associates who have been convicted of crimes, that's a real political issue that I imagine Trey Gowdy and Bob Goodlatte call us. I think they would pay attention.
I'm going to hand you the drum to beat.
Carly Rae Jepsen.
So Laura, campaign finance violations. Typically, do those carry jail terms? I mean, I don't know if the case of John Edwards, who also used an intermediary to pay off a mistress, if that is instructive in looking at this case, but what is Michael Cohen and or the president facing in terms of penalties?
Well, you do actually have a stated penalty in the statute of up to 5 years for these sorts of crimes and a corresponding fine. And the Edwards case is a little bit unique because, remember, there was a hung jury on portions of that particular verdict on issues of campaign finance. So we're unclear as to how that would be directive in this particular case. However, I will note that the rock and the hard place that we're talking about Donald Trump, not only do you remember Dinesh D'Souza, who only a couple months ago was pardoned by the President of the United States for what? A campaign finance violation for personally contributing using a straw donor. The president is well aware of his pardoning power as it comes to terms with this particular sort of case. He has not been willing to extend it to this point in time to Michael Cohen, and perhaps his betrayal is the reason, but he has already exercised this power. But remember, there is one other aspect of it. Normally, when the President of the United States, well, I can't say normally, but if the President of the United States were to pardon somebody, it would have a dual impact on whether that person could now testify in other cases. It could have the effect of giving that person immunity. If the president is able to pardon Michael Cohen, well, then there's no reason why Michael Cohen would face legal jeopardy if he were to testify against the President of the United States. It would actually inure to the benefit of Bob Mueller and his investigation. If Bob Mueller were to give Michael Cohen immunity, it would have the same effect. Either way, you basically have Donald Trump between the rock and the hard place, knowing that either way he turns, whether he wants to reward or condemn and punish Michael Cohen, he still faces his right-hand man being able to talk openly, not only in a court of law, but at a congressional hearing.
John, one of the things that isn't being discussed, I think, quite enough here is that the president has been accused of being part of this criminal conspiracy days before the election to cover up information before the election that would have been detrimental to his chances in the election. Again, so if what Michael Cohen says is true here, the president did something illegal to help him win.
Absolutely.
And do we know with certainty that it did not help him win, that this criminal conspiracy the president accused of taking part in didn't help him win the election?
I think we could say if the Stormy Daniels information had gotten out before the election, if the payoff to Karen McDougal, VMI, had gotten out before the election, it wouldn't have helped. It wouldn't have helped his case. And so, and look, some folks may say or try to spin today that a campaign finance violation is nothing resembling the traditional standards of impeachment. But we also know that impeachment is a political process. What we do know is that this is serious, and Cohen has laid it out very clearly. These payments were made, despite all their denials, specifically to influence the outcome in an election or to avoid a real problem. That's a problem for the president, maybe a political problem, as well as a legal problem. Well, that rises to the standard of impeachment is something yet.
And Shannon, I mean, by the way, it's not just Michael Cohen's word. There are suggestions now. The Washington Post has seen things. There's a paper trail. There's wire transfers. There's evidence of this payment. It's no longer a he said, you know. Now this is a court of law. There's evidence. And so that will, I assume, make it harder for the president to counter this.
Oh, absolutely. And there may be other audio tapes as well. There's just lots of potential evidence here. It's a very, very strong case. I think it's very hard for him to present the legal defense. He's really going to have to rely on the notion he can't be indicted unless he wants to go back to a mark I think the president once made, which he thinks maybe he can even pardon himself. But legally here, I just don't see any really good defenses for him. This is a pretty locked down case.
The lawyers I've heard from say this is a stronger case than the John Edwards case for a couple obvious reasons. One is you have a witness now, Michael Cohen, who can testify in the Edwards case. The witnesses, I think one was deceased and one was 101 years old and not able to testify. You also have the timing. Again, weeks before the election. Did it make a difference? Who knows? Was it the only thing that made a difference? Absolutely not. There were a lot of factors in the election. Could it have swayed a few votes if this had come out beforehand? Quite possibly. Quite possibly. We might never know. Laura Coates, what's Bob Mueller doing this morning?
I suspect that he's putting his nose to the grind and he's actually getting more work done, knowing that he has really two feathers in his cap. Number one, he's got the feather of having, although it wasn't a comprehensive victory, there are still 10 counts that a jury was able to hang on in the Paul Manafort trial, but he's got 8 counts that are under his belt going into a new trial where he has purportedly 3 times the amount of evidence against that person. You've got somebody named Michael Cohen, who, although there was not a cooperation language clause in his particular plea agreement, certainly could help in a global plea discussion or a global cooperation agreement. You've got Robert Mueller realizing that he has extended the time in which he has to sentence Michael Flynn, the national security advisor who was fired and also pled guilty, who he knows as well. He has on the hook longer to help in other cases or the investigation. If you're Robert Mueller, I think that he's probably a little more than quietly confident these days. Having said that, however, you still have this very real reaction from the president of the United States that we know is coming, is forthcoming, because the president of the United States, the reason this case is so much stronger, it's not just the paper trail that you saw in a case like Paul Manafort with wire transfers and documentary evidence. You've got the president of the United States confirming over Twitter that he in fact directed payments. You have his own attorney, who now will likely be a lawyer, a witness in this case, saying that the president has actually done what Michael Cohen said he did. This is a really big problem. But if I'm Robert Mueller, I'm probably smirking this morning.
I don't know that he has that in the various facial muscles that,
in his repertoire.
Are important to him, but
maybe he's furrowing his brow a little bit more.
That's right.
A little more.
Laura, Shan, John, thank you very much.
Good to see you.
You too. President Trump picking a new fight over the national anthem during NFL games. The Bleacher Report is next.
On paid leave while Ohio State investigates what he knew about domestic violence claims against former assistant coach Zach Smith. Myers said he knew about a 2009 abuse allegation Smith's wife Courtney made toward her then husband, but he said he was not aware of a 2015 incident until last month. Meyer then later said he did follow protocol by reporting it. Smith, who has denied the abuse allegations, was fired from the team last month, 3 days after his wife received a protective order. Elsewhere, after months of attacks on the NFL and its players over protests, President Trump is now taking aim at ESPN. ESPN recently announcing the network will not air the national anthem before its Monday Night Football games. This is what the president said at a rally yesterday in West Virginia.
It was just announced by ESPN that rather than defending our anthem, our beautiful, beautiful national anthem, and defending our flag, they've decided that they just won't broadcast when they play the national anthem. We don't like that.
The NFL put its national anthem policy on hold last month while it continues to have discussions with the players on how exactly to handle it. So in the meantime, that means, guys, there's still no punishment for players that do choose to demonstrate.
It was just interesting to hear the president bring it up again last night. There was other news.
I was going to say, not like there was a lot going on.
That he could have spoken about. So it now seems as though this is a distraction.
Do you think that was a coincidence?
No.
I'm voting
I
no.
don't.
I'm voting
No.
no on that.
Seems as though.
Yeah.
Correct.
Thanks,
Lindsay, thank
Lindsay.
you.
You're welcome, guys.
All right, so an update for you now on that Colorado man accused of killing his pregnant wife and 2 daughters. He appeared emotionless as he was charged in their murders. But as the charges were read, Shannon Watts' father put his head in his hands and sobbed. His son consoled him. If Chris Watts is charged with 9 counts, the 33-year-old is being held without bond.
Just an incredible story out of Arkansas. A 3-year-old boy and his 1-year-old brother somehow managed to survive on their own for days after they survived a car crash that killed their mother. Now, the older child was found Monday morning after police received a 911 call about a boy walking by himself along a state highway. Authorities later found his little brother alive, still strapped in his car seat when the vehicle was discovered in a ravine. Now, police believe the accident may have happened Thursday. Police are calling the boy's survival nothing short of a miracle.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, it's just so heartrending when I think about those little boys in the car alone and whatever conversation they had before the 3-year-old struck out to leave the car and I guess try to go get help. And the fact that he was found on a highway and spotted, it's incredible.
It also shows you what strength what a 3-year-old is capable of and what
I know.
strength that they can possess even at that young age.
Gosh. All right, back to our top story. Of course, the President of the United States accused in court by his longtime